Welcome to Average Joe's Gym's Home Projects, where we do projects and maintenance at home that even an average Joe can accomplish. In today's episode, I'm going to fix a LG front load washer that's developed some kind of a water leak. I believe it might be coming from the hot water valve at the back of the washer, but we'll have to get in there to decide whether that's going to do it or not. I'm really looking forward to this one. I don't do a lot of repairs on appliances, so it's going to be a learning experience the whole way through. I hope you enjoy the episode and learn a little something on the way. Let's do it. So here's our washer, which we found in an archaeological dig just outside of Cairo. I think it's about 15 years old, and it's been pretty good for us. It just is starting to leak some water every time we run a load. We talked about just getting a new one, but man, have you seen how much these things cost now? For those of you that are apprehensive about starting an appliance repair, I don't blame you. I decided I was just going to take it apart and take a look at it and see if I could actually fix it. If I couldn't, I was going to have to buy a new one anyway and get rid of this thing. Once the water's off, you want to remove these two hoses from the washer, and then you're going to remove these screws. That's just two of them. There's more on the other side as well. And once you get those screws undone, that's going to allow you to get inside and take a look. I just looped the hoses back to the drain there so that any remaining water will just go down the drain hole. Once you remove the cover plate, this one right here, you'll see that the valves just kind of sit in there in the back. They're actually attached to the cover plate. Some of those screws you remove allows them to kind of free float back there and give you a little bit of room to work. You see right there, hang on to those screws. You're going to need them later when you put it back together. I started poking around in there looking for where there was water coming out. I eventually determined that it was this little valve right here. Right where the plastic meets the metal there, which I believe is the solenoid. That little guy was leaking a little bit of water every time that the valve opened. I was actually pretty relieved because all you have to do is unplug that cable back there and then take the hose off the back, which appeared to be held on by a pretty basic little friction clamp. Having just those two parts to remove, it was pretty encouraging as long as I could find a valve that could replace that one at a decent price. Enter Amazon, hawker of all things obscure. As usual, Amazon affiliate links are in the description. Just make sure you get the right model. Here it is 2 days later on my doorstep. I was so excited to get this thing and become the hero of my family fixing the washer that I didn't realize that it's an aftermarket part and it's not exactly the same. If you look at it closely, the prongs that plug into the washer are actually on the side of this valve instead of pointing toward the back. I figured, well, we'll give it a shot. I double checked the numbers and it said it should work. So let's take a look. So here's the first part of removing the old valve. You got to unplug that cord up there. It's pretty simple. It's just a simple tension cord that plugs in, two-prong. Now you just need to remove this hose at the bottom. That's a pretty simple little clamp. All you got to do is get some needle nose pliers on that thing, loosen them by pinching it, and then slide the hose right off. I discovered if you slide the clamp first, then the hose comes off much easier after that. Don't forget that there's a little residual water in there. Now that you got the old valve off and you've got the tube in your hands, it's time for the old switcheroo. Grab the new valve and install that sucker. Okay, now that the hose is on there, we just need to get the clamp on so that there's enough tension on there to keep it from leaking. So plugging it in is going to be a little more difficult because the way the old valve was with the prongs pointing toward the back, it was a little easier to get it on there. This one, because they're pointing to the left there, I'm going to have to pull a little bit more of the wire out and also push the valve in. If you have small hands for this kind of job, it's way easier to do. I finally got it in there, but before I put everything back together, I want to test this thing out first to make sure that it works. A little hint, make sure you tighten these hoses down on the valves really well. You'll see a small problem I had. At this point, I pretty much came to the conclusion that hand tight wasn't going to cut it. And I probably should add some Teflon tape to that too, which I ended up doing. You ever get the feeling like you're being watched when you're doing a project? Or someone's always looking over your shoulder to see what you're doing and why it's taking so long? Pipe wrenches are great, as long as you don't over tighten them. So just be careful if you use a pipe wrench on a plastic valve like that. If you over tighten it, you can end up cracking the plastic valve. Okay, so I tested it out to see if it was operating properly by just running one of the cycles where it was going to have to use that valve. And it worked out. So the next thing I had to do is take it apart again and then put it all back together. Don't forget to shut the water off again, because you don't want to take that hose off the washer while it's still charged. Now, trying to get the cover back on may seem simple, but wasn't quite as simple as I hoped. A couple of the screws go through the faceplate and into the valve to hold the valve to it. I dropped that screw probably like 4 times, but I edited it out so you don't have to watch it. There it is. The screws magically ended up into the washer to hold the valves to the plate. Unfortunately, I discovered that you can't get the plate underneath the outside of the washer if they're attached to the valves. I'm not going to waterboard you with the clown show of me getting this part done, so here it is in high speed. Mission accomplished. Alright, there it is. As you can see, the plate's on, the valves are through the holes, and you can see the screw holes through the plate. So now we can put it all back together. Once all the screws are back in the plate and the valves, it's time to reconnect all the hoses and get this thing going. So we connected it all back together, and now we're going to slide it back into place. Be careful, guys, this thing's very heavy. But it's not a one-man job for most people, but it is for me. Here it is, our water valve repair of our ancient washer, now good as new. If you enjoyed this project, please check out our other projects on Average Joe's Gym's home projects. And please like and subscribe for future projects.